Just before I share my screen, I just might go through a little bit of how the webinar functions and what the work is. So I can't see anybody out there. It's just me presenting. I've got Kathy Chaston-Radway from the Great Barrier Foundation. Kathy works on grants with myself. With me today, she's hanging out, helping me with questions and helping run the webinar. Also, you can see Eliza on the screen. Eliza's helping me do Q&A. Eliza's also part of our team. Kathy's actually based in Brisbane, down in the Brisbane Great Barrier Foundation office, and Eliza's up in Townsville with me. So we'll be your kind of grants team for the webinar today. The way it works is that there's a Q&A function. If you can just see at the bottom of your screen, you can see your little participants, which like little people sign. Then you've got a Q&A with the little sound bubbles. If you can write your questions in there, Eliza's going to be collecting them and bringing them into me as I go along with the talk, and I'll try and answer them as we go through in kind of collection bits. But there's also a dedicated space at the end where we can work through the list of questions as well if things happen too fast. The questions that we collect today go up onto a frequently asked question space on the website for the foundation, and that's just an equity piece. So if people are asking, getting more information or needing clarity, and we're providing advice, we'll provide the advice to everybody across the board so that people kind of have all the same information. That's kind of our aim for this. If there's a question I can't answer straight off, I'm not going to give you bad information. I'm just going to take it on notice if that's okay. I'll answer you personally, but again, whatever the answer is, I will be putting up on the frequently asked questions space just to make sure everyone's got access to that information. So if anyone's not had a go before and you want to sort of just throw a hello in the Q&A little sound bubble down the bottom, just jump in and give me a hoy so I know that it's working. And then might just share the screen and get into the talk if that's okay. I just can't see anyone talking to me at the moment, so I don't know if it works. So someone's going to need to be brave. Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it. So I just got that level of confidence now that it's working and that people can kind of see where they can just write something in. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, so let me share the talk for today. Swing it around. All righty. We've got a thumbs up. Okay, we've got a thumbs up for Kathy. All right, welcome everybody. We'll kick off. Today's webinar is about the Reef Trust Partnership Traditional Owners Stage 2 grants. I just wanted to explain, and I just kind of alluded to it a little bit before, we've actually got 2 grant opportunities out for the foundation at the moment for traditional owners. There's the Healthy Water Grant Round, which is opened at the same time as this grant round. They are separate, and so traditional owner groups are able to apply in either or both. So you can apply for a Healthy Water Grant and you're able to apply in the Stage 2 grants round. They're very different and for different reasons. They're for different amounts, and that's why I need to go through both of the grant opportunities separately. Let me just use my controls. Before I go any further, I would just like to acknowledge the country that I'm meeting today, where I'm sitting. I'm on Walkarukabal country. I just want to acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging, and just thank them for all the contributions into this program. We're heavily invested in working with traditional owners in a co-design approach, and this is a very important thing for us. So what are we going through today? I'll do a little bit of context setting so that people can understand the Reef Trust partnerships and what this opportunity is actually about. I'll be going through the grant guidelines and just pointing out the particular places where I want people to be mindful where there's good information that can be found to help put in a grant application. And I'm going to talk just a little bit at the end about the application process. This is a question and answer function. We've got that ability, so ask questions along the way, and I'll certainly attempt to answer them and work on that. The grant guidelines and the application form are there to help you. The frequently asked questions are another form of assistance. This webinar, and I'll also just touch on it at the end, but we've actually got some grant training workshops coming up that people can apply for, especially if you're an emerging or a group that have not got much experience in applying for grants. We're making an opportunity of putting some training out there so people can apply for that and get some assistance just in understanding how grants work. So I'm just going to let everyone know that the Reef Trust Partnership, it's an agreement between the Australian Government and the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, and it's a $443 million grant over 6 years. So we're actually completing the second year, so we've got 4 years left. So there's 4 years left of this contract to deliver the program. There's 5 major components that sit within the RTP, the Reef Trust Partnership. You've got water quality improvement, Crown of Thorns control, it's a control program, reef restoration adaptation science, and then there's the Indigenous and community reef protection activities are combined, but we've actually got the Traditional Owner Partnership reef protection component with a team servicing that area, and then there's a community section servicing that area. And then there's the integrated monitoring and reporting activities. So those are the 5, those are the kind of the component areas. But as part of a negotiated deal at the front of the program, it was negotiated by my director, Liz Wren. We actually called for more assistance and more uplift into the traditional owner space so that traditional owners had more opportunity, or, you know, just tried to level out the opportunity for traditional owners who are working across the component areas. And there was a negotiated 10% investment in each of the 4 areas that I'm just going to point out to you now: in the healthy water, the Crown of Thorns, the reef restoration, and the integrated monitoring and reporting. Each of those large components that had those investment buckets set aside 10% to come in and just be dedicated to traditional owner work. And that's the focus, and that's how we're getting basically these grant rounds that are happening at the moment are about using the money that's for the component areas for traditional owners, and that's the uplift piece that we're trying to address. So at a high level, the objectives and outcomes for the Reef Trust Partnership is really about achieving sort of significant and measurable improvement in the health of the Great Barrier Reef. We've only got 6 years to do it, and so it seems like a big task, but we're using lots of different ways of approaching that, and one of them is to actually do an uplift where people, like community members and traditional owners, are actually very much invested in helping into that space. The expected outcomes at the overarching level is we want improved management of the Great Barrier Reef and all the relevant activities in the adjacent catchments. And that's particularly relevant, obviously, to the water quality area. Protection of the attributes that contribute to the outstanding universal value of the Great Barrier Reef, and those that list is as long as you can think of it. It's the species, it's the animals, it's the plants, it's the Indigenous heritage values, it's the customary values, it's the culture, those sorts of things. And we're also very much about managing the key threats to the Great Barrier Reef, and in particular the ones that we've got to focus on in this space is Crown of Thorn outbreaks and poor water quality. When it comes to the traditional owner reef component, the reef protection component, we've actually only got a sort of like a singular purpose, and that's to improve the engagement of traditional owners in the protection of the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area within those component areas. So we really are about an uplift piece and an investment piece in traditional owners working in this space. And that's what leads us to the Stage 2 grants that have just been released on the 6th of October. So this grant round is actually, it's worth $1.5 million, and it's really, there is a tight focus on traditional owners applying and operating and running these projects against the priorities that they see. What we've got here is the kind of areas and the opportunities that we see would be addressed by the grants. It's going to strengthen leadership and build capabilities. We're looking for people for opportunities where traditional owners can increase their skills and get training, planning and the on-ground activities that enhance participation in those Reef Trust Partnership component areas, and build, maintain and strengthen the key partnerships, as well as provide the opportunity for this mapping, conservation, protection, everything that's sort of involved around the heritage value space or the cultural value space, where things are linked to the component areas. Now, it is part of the Reef Trust Partnership, and that means the areas or the focus areas for this grant round are Crown of Thorns, integrated monitoring and reporting, and the RAS, which is the Reef Restoration and Adaptation Science area. So we're looking sort of like for high impact positive outcomes for the reef, but where it relates to those areas. So like I said before, there's $1.5 million available, and there's two types of funding avenues to enter into. The standard grants, or what we expect or anticipate most grants will be addressing, is in the area what we call standard grants, and we're in the amounts for that are between $50,000 and $150,000. But we do acknowledge that there are groups who have been working potentially in some of these spaces for a long time, and who are very much partnership ready and may have projects that are running that need to scale up, or may want to involve more than one group. And we've got, for those circumstances, we've got $300,000, dollar grants which can be accessed. We've got it under special circumstances. It just means that there may be more consideration that needs to go into it. We're looking in the assessment sort of stage, but I can talk about that a little bit later. So what we're looking for is in the straightforward grant application, 50 to 150K is a straightforward grant, and I'll explain in the detail that's coming up how that looks. And then there are complex grants that we'll certainly consider where groups are well advanced in their thinking, have really well developed project plans, and potentially in partnership with other traditional owner groups or external partners to do a special uplift piece. I need to talk about the key dates. These are critically important. We're all running on very tight timelines, I know, but this grant opportunity opened on the 6th of October, and it's open for 6 weeks. So it won't close until the 17th of November, and I've put it as close to midnight as I can because I need to actually be awake and close them off officially. So I put 11:45 down there as my cut-off date of when I can stop receiving grant applications there. 6 weeks is I think quite a long time to get sorted and to write, and to actually have the time to talk to potentially other traditional owner groups or partners, or get help if you need to write grants. So that's why we made it a little bit longer than some grant rounds are open. But that also matches in with the time that we're going to need back here at the foundation to do the eligibility checks, that run the grants through an assessment process, because it is a competitive grant round. And what we anticipate is that successful and unsuccessful applicants will know about the 11th of December. So I'm just kind of aiming for that second week of December there. Then we're going to have shutdown periods. So everyone's going to go on holiday, go and have Christmas. You'll know or not know if you've got a grant. And when we come back in mid-January, we'll start to do the funding agreements and the contract negotiations after there. So that will give a project start time around the early parts of February. So I just wanted to make it really clear to people that these grants really are aiming for projects that you want to run in the 2021 year. There is no chance of anyone starting before then. We just won't have the resources or the timeline to do it any faster than that. So this is a really good opportunity for setting up your business plan for next year. So as I mentioned before, the RTP has a number of components. This second stage grant round is addressing the Crown of Thorns control, the integrated monitoring and reporting, and the reef restoration adaptation science components. It's not for water quality, only because we've got a $4.5 million water quality opportunity open at the same time. And what it also means then is that you can come in and make one application for these 3 areas here. But you can also make a separate and an eligible application over in the water quality space. So if you're a single traditional owner groups, the most applications you can put in is 2. One for this grant round and one potentially for water quality. If you have projects that sit across more than one topic, i.e. Crown of Thorns and integrated monitoring, or maybe you've got integrated monitoring and RS, you can roll your projects. You can put in 2 project plans, or you can put in a full project plan. That just explains the different activities across the different areas. You don't just have to apply for one component area in this space. You can apply for multiple. So I've mentioned before, but I just wanted to say there are lots of different areas that kind of tie back into those component areas. And it's about the actual on-ground activities as well as about the uplift piece, about the capability and capacity building potential for the activities that you want to roll out, and they fall across these areas. So the leadership and capacity building, planning, innovation, partnership development, and then also the Indigenous heritage value mapping where it relates to the RTP component. I've got tables coming up that will explain, we've given lots of examples. They're not exhaustive lists. We've just come up with as many examples as we could think of to help traditional owners think about how these grants might apply to the work they want to do. Speaking of tables, here's the COTS one. So in the grant guidelines, I'm just going to quickly grab my guidelines. I've got them here, and I'll just let you know which page you need to flip to, but they're pretty obvious. So on page 8, 9 and 10, these are the tables that are there to sort of guide you about what sort of opportunities you can build a project around or might match a existing project that you're thinking of into this area. As you can see, we've got the activity type down the left-hand side of the table. You can see the leadership and capacity building, planning, partnerships, those sorts of things. And for Crown of Thorns control, here's the types of activities that you might want to actually apply for. I'm just going to pick out a few, but you can see that you've got provide specialised COTS control program training. So you can do anything. You could do Cert 3, you could do advanced diving training for maybe your ranger group or traditional owners who are interested in a career pathway in this space. There is, the ability to provide specialised culturally appropriate training or leadership programs to build capacity in COTS control areas. So if people are thinking about a business area that they want to develop or move into, this can lay the foundation groundwork for any of that sort of thinking. Just keep running down the list, keep referring to your grant guidelines. You can see what these look like. Develop and share protocols and working together in the COTS control areas. So tour operators that are going out or the vessels that are going out doing COTS control work, if there needs to be a partnership forged there and people understand the cultural sensitivities of operating on some reefs, traditional owners might want to do the work in that space. I'm just going to point out for this one particular one, the Foundation's not investing in water control methods during this grant program. So if you actually wanted to apply for money to do the actual specialised COTS removal, this is not the space for this investment. If you want to be trained to get ready for that space, absolutely, not a problem. We just don't have the insurance cover to actually support fully developed projects or programs in that space yet. But this is the sort of setup and starting phase that you could get ready or training or operationalised to do that later on. Let me just, flick through. In integrated monitoring and reporting, same sort of table down the side and the examples that we've got listed here, you can see that there's more, training opportunities, foundational activities that assist business readiness to participate in your integrated monitoring and reporting. So if you need, database training support, GIS training support, digital technologies, all of those sorts of things. If you want to develop country-based management and implementation plans as part of your integrated monitoring, so they are available to be funded under this space here. You need to indicate in your application form, it's the IMR component, integrated monitoring and reporting component, and then you need to describe what you want. You can use this opportunity to develop seasonal calendars. All of this is really important because it links in with the cultural and heritage values of the reef, and traditional owner groups. We are going to be supporting traditional owner groups to articulate and document those in plans that the groups can use into the future for different areas. There's database support, actually purchase of cultural and heritage databases in this space too. Now, later on we're going to talk about what's not funded. There are funding caps on assets and things like that. There is an exception placed in the guidelines around the purchase of cultural heritage databases. They need to be accompanied by a quote, but the cap of $10,000 doesn't apply to purchase of cultural heritage databases if groups need to invest in those. Again, mapping of cultural and heritage values, and monitoring, so monitoring programs, monitoring the condition and status of identified cultural and heritage values where it's not currently being funded or supported. So there's lots of opportunities. Like I said before, these activities aren't limited. These are just some of the ideas that the Traditional Owner Advisory Group came up with and that our team came up with when we were working with traditional owners in this, thinking about what could be, adequately, eligibly funded under these component areas. RS, a nice little tricky area, but there's lots of opportunities that we could think of here. Again, look at the space, look at the areas. We've got training and education, leadership, the capacity building, including ways to introduce scientific concepts and skills, as well as communication, project management skills, where traditional owners want to work in this space, want to work with managers, want to work with scientists, want to be part of the projects that are being rolled out in the larger component area, the larger 90% of the RS component. Opportunities to access training through the Reef Restoration Toolkit and some other associated resources that might be out there, that if groups are aware of those, you can use this funding, set up a training sort of opportunity through this grant and have that done. We've got developed sea country plans that describe and report on biocultural values and traditional owner aspirations, about the threats and pressures on your country. So that's really important. You can direct conversations in the wider Reef Restoration Adaptation Program, and it might also might lead to things like the development of toolkits or permit applications or those sorts of things. Look, development of research plans, ethics and engagement guidelines to help guide research, the development of innovative solutions to help improve the health and resilience of your reef. This is a very, very open space. It's out of the box thinking is definitely can be applied here. But think about what reef restoration adaptation science means to you. Think about what your country needs, what your reef needs from you in terms of support. And I think you can make an argument that it would fit in this space. So that's kind of like the what can I apply for area, and then we need to talk about who is eligible to apply. So it's perhaps always a little bit easier to explain who's not eligible, and then the other bits kind of make a lot more sense. So you can't be an individual. So individuals can't apply. You need to be a legal entity to apply for a grant. And so, for example, that can be an incorporated association, it can be a body corporate, company, cooperative society. You've got your Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander corporation, a trust, that's duly constituted, those sorts of things, because we need to enter into a funding agreement with you, and so there needs to be some sort of governance arrangement set up that can actually accept basically the money through a funding agreement. The other important aspect is that you need to be a traditional owner group for the area that the work or the planning is proposed for, or have the culturally appropriate permission where the project may apply over multiple areas. So if a project is being applied for under this grant program and it's with multiple traditional owner groups, we need to see the evidence. We need to see the support and the involvement of all of the traditional owner groups from the different sea country areas. This is making perfect sense to traditional owner groups out there who are listening to this webinar, but I just want to be clear that that's the information that we're looking for. You can see the other ones there. There are conditions to the application, confirms that there's no conflict of interest, and that you must be able to hold the right sort of insurances, and that information is at the back of the grant guidelines, and I think also the application form about what types of insurances you might need to hold if you're successful. It's actually at the back of the grant application form. It's on page 14. No, it's not. It's on page 13. So it's not page 11. My apologies. On page 11, you'll see what that is. And like I said before, the project needs to be ready to start by about February. Now, we do have the ability completely within this grant, both grant rounds, this grant round as well, that if traditional owner groups who don't have a governance arrangement in place, or who don't have a bank account that money can go into, can arrange for a sponsor or an auspicing arrangement through potentially, and we've got lots of different ones that are possible that traditional owner groups are using from the first grant round. People have gone through natural resource management groups, they've gone through other traditional owner groups that have like a steering committee or a PBC, and that's been sponsored by them. We've got, I'm just trying to think, there are other business entities out there who are, auspicing for traditional owner groups, and it just means that the money has somewhere to go, and that our expectation is that the traditional owner group, in whose country the project is happening, is still leading the project, invested in the project, and the outcomes of the project are all about the traditional owner group and the component or the sea country that that project is on. So definitely take advantage or make use of the auspicing arrangements if you need to. And we're trying to make these grants available to as many groups as we possibly can, and we don't want anyone to be disadvantaged if they're not quite ready yet. So especially if you're in a space where you want more training, or you want an uplift piece where you want to do that really foundational work that gets you more ready into bigger project space, you can seek it. You can seek a sponsor. So not eligible, and I've got this list here. I just talked about before. We can't give grants to individual people. It needs to go through a group type of entity. The other one that's really important here is organisations that have at the application closing date overdue final reports or acquittals for other grant programs. But that's also including our grant program, our first grant round program, or if you've got a looking after country grant program that has outstanding acquittals. I can't think what else is open or running at the moment, but we do due diligence checks as part of the eligibility in the assessment space, and so that would make you not eligible to apply if you have any of those outstanding. So just make sure they're all, if anyone's got multiple grants happening, make sure they're all in a good place before you put an application in. The regional, national, natural resource management organisations, peak industry groups, all levels of government. Those first two you can apply as an auspicing or as a sponsor. It's just it's on the behest or behalf of the traditional owner group. The all levels of government can't apply as a sponsor either, though. So let's just talk about what can be funded. To be eligible, the project needs to align with one or more of the RTP component areas. So it has to be in some way, can be loosely, like very foundational, like early stages. It has a line of sight to either COTS control, the integrated monitoring and reporting, or the RS. Grant applications, if you tick in the application form, if you tick a standard project, the costing must be between $50,000 and $150,000. And if you tick the complex grant, then it must not exceed the $300,000 mark. We've got a 2-year sort of mapping process. Standard projects must be completed no later than the 30th of June 2023. However, the complex projects can go to the end of the RTP contract, which is at this point 30th of May 2024. So if you need the extra time for the complex projects, they're able to go out until the 30th of May. That doesn't mean they have to. If you want to do a very large 1-year project in a $300,000 range, that's acceptable. It's also just letting you know that because we understand the complexity and the scale up, there is extra time there to deliver that large program. I'm not going to go through all of these, but in the grant guidelines, we've got all the information about what can't be funded. So if you have a look about at that list, you can kind of see the things that just don't fall into what this grant round is all about. The big points for us is that if you've got an existing project or program happening and the work has already happened, we can't fund retrospectively. So we can build onto existing projects and widen them and build them about future work. There'll be no duplication of funding, but we can sort of take something, if something's working on a small scale at the moment and you want to scale it up and go share it with neighbouring groups, you want to take it to a much bigger area and apply it across, have greater reach for it, absolutely you can sort of show that you were doing a pilot program or a smaller scale program, and you can build on that. What else is there? You can see overseas travel. You can see, like, if we can't find the relationship to the sort of like Reef Trust partnership component area, then we're going to be very hard to kind of assess you into that space. So just be mindful that there are things that can't be funded. Let's just have a quick talk about the application process. So the applications need to be submitted by 11:45 on the 17th of November. There's an email address. It's applications@barrierreef.org. It's on the back of your guidelines. It's on the back of your application form, that address. It's also on the website, but that's where we'll be accepting grant applications. We've got assessment panels. There are 2 separate panels, one for the Healthy Water grants, and there'll be one for this Stage 2 grants round. They'll be assessed across a 2-week period from when they close until just the very first week of November. That will let that assessment panel provide the recommendations and provide the advice to the GBRF board about what the panel found and what they're going to recommend and how we fit with the available funds, that sort of thing. I've got their approval, but it's basically a sign off. The assessment panel is going to make, has assessment criteria and a very rigid process to follow. The board will take note of that and sign off on that, and then that will be put up in that second week of December. So that's about the 11th of December, I'm anticipating. Like I said, we're all going to close down, have a wonderful Christmas. Then there are funding agreements that will be negotiated. The negotiation is just that an example of the funding agreement will go up on the website. It will be located just underneath where the application and grant guidelines are. I'm going to put a copy of the funding agreement up. I hope it goes up today. It's just it's to be done. That the negotiation piece is just we'll take the successful project and we'll just map out the schedule. The objectives, what I said, the activities you want to deliver on, with the due dates that you felt that you could deliver by, and then with an end date and those sorts of things, with a payment schedule. That will be done. And then, so it's off and running in February with your projects. There are reporting requirements every 6 months, financial and just updates on progress. And then a lot of that data is used in our monitoring evaluation of how the overarching program is going. So we'll be using that and calling on people to kind of invest in that space as well. And then, depending on when your project finishes, it'll be a wrap. Briefly about the application process, there are eligibility criteria. We just do checks at the very, very beginning to make sure that people have ticked the right boxes on the application form and that people are who they say they are, types of things. So there's an acceptance of conditions. There's just a checkbox in your application form. Make sure you check it. You've read the conditions and you accept them. The Trish Liner Group is a legal entity that we could enter into a project with them, and so that's really important. There's no conflict of interest, and that you've got the ability to hold the required insurances. We can work with groups if they haven't currently got them at the time that they're successful, but they will need to be in place before the funding agreements are signed off. You've got to fall into one of, obviously, the grant areas, the 150, between the 50 and 150 for standard grants, or the 300,000 for complex grants. And then we just must see the line of sight to the COTS, IMR or RS. And then it's just really important about the placing of where the project is happening, and that you are, working, or you are the Trish Liner Group for that area, or you have the permission of the Trish Liner Group for that area. We have 5 assessment criteria, so we'll be pulling together an assessment panel. I usually have 5 members. I try to get people who have experience in grants, but also try and have people experienced in the component area. And I try to have a half-half sort of split on people who are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, to bring that perspective into the area for the assessment. It's very important that we try and keep that balance. All of the criteria are same level. They're all worth 10 points. There's no weighting on them, and they are linked to. Kathy's done a really good job here of linking the area in the application form to the actual specific criteria that we've got. So the first assessment criteria is that the project is Trish Liner led, and you're able to provide the answer in section 3.2 and 5.2 on the application form. So tell us about yourself or your Trish Liner Group, where you are, how you're going to be involved, how you're involved with the planning, how did you think up the idea, who will be involved in actually delivering the project and the outcomes for Trish Liners that you kind of anticipate seeing. It could be that you're planning on having 10 people trained in project management, or some on ground training certificate, just let us know what you anticipate that to be and how that's going to have an impact for your group. The second assessment criteria is the need and potential benefit of the project and the project outcomes. So this is about why it's important, what it means to your group, to your country, how it will improve things, how it will actually contribute to the areas and to the work that you're doing. Potentially it could link to a country-based plan that you've already got developed, or something like that, or maybe you're developing a country-based plan. You'll know how to talk to that and how that's important. This is basically in section 2.3 of the application form. You've got 500 to 750 words, I think, to explain that, but put down as much information as you possibly can in that space. I'm just quickly looking at the guidelines to see what it is. So you can list any of the values here that are affected, or how they'll be improved, or how they'll be benefited from the actual project. And how maybe if it's a foundational type of activity, how that will actually put you in a good place for further future successes and that sort of thing. Like I said, read the descriptions in the grant guidelines to help guide you about what that information will be, because this is the information that the assessment panel can use. The third assessment criteria is your project plan and your budget, and this is a really good area to get right, to spend a bit of time on. Sometimes people kind of run out of time because they're so busy writing the other places that they don't spend much time on, especially the budget. But think about, in your project plan, we're asking you to just dot out the different sorts of activities that you want to run or hold or deliver, and what they will cost you. And where you can, if you can, especially for things that are quite large, get quotes from consultants or contractors, get quotes for things that you need to purchase, and provide that, you can upload that evidence as part of your application form. It really helps the assessment panel when they're looking at value for money, that they can see that this is an actual true cost, that people have kind of done some investigating. If you can't get, an actual quote in time, just say that you put out for 3 quotes and it looks like it's going to fall into this space. There's very different there's varying degrees of costs, and I can fully appreciate that costs up in Cape York sometimes to get things transported up and delivered and all those sorts of things. The cost can seem very different from what it might cost down in Townsville or in Cairns or in different places. So we're very open to understanding how value for money sits across different spatial areas. So just be as clear as you can and give as much information as you can in this space. Assessment criteria number 4 is about the capacity of the organisation of the group to deliver the project. If you are a new group and you're asking for, you're asking for a project that's really going to build that capacity, that's okay. Just explain in this area, in this section 4.1 of the application form, that this is new, that this is new training, and how it will be done, how it will be delivered, and how it will have benefit. For groups that have got more governance arrangements or more experience in this space, provide examples of projects that you've run before, how you've managed them. For groups that are using sponsors or going through that auspicing line, this is definitely a space to lean on your sponsor and use their capacity and how they can help you in potentially organising or setting up meetings or report writing or managing the finances of those sorts of things. Put that information into that space so that we can be part of the assessment. The last one is going to be really important. It's about communicating what you're doing in terms of the project, your successes. I mean, the hardships, sometimes projects don't go as easily or as we plan, but it's certainly always good about lessons learned that we can communicate. So this is about how you communicate not only within the group, so with all the traditional owners, members that you're working with, but also to the wider community. A few of the examples that I can just provide here in the first round of grants is that people are using social media. They've been posting updates on their Facebook sites and sharing it over to the foundation so we can see how they're going. Instagram snapshots, also doing Twitter. I've had some of the grants be interviewed in their local newspapers, and they've sent us copies of those newspapers. Feel free to go on and do radio for K1G's always looking for great stories. And then just also conferences, workshops. So at the Indigenous Ranger Conference, people can talk about the projects that they're doing there if they want to. don't know if it's appropriate. I'm just putting out that there might be workshops or opportunities, and certainly in community forums, we've had some really great communication from our first grant round holders in those places. So have a think about what you think would be suitable for you, and certainly let us know and share with us what your ideas are. Obviously, you can just plan for these things, and we'll see how they go. So in developing the application, you've got the form there. It's in a Word version, so you can type into it, but you're welcome to, if you need to, you can take it off, and if you want to old school it and handwrite it, we'll accept all versions. A really important point here, one that I just wanted to sort of emphasise, is the applicant, which is it's in the first page of the application form. The applicant needs to be the owner of the bank account that the money goes into, and so if you're having a sponsoring or auspicing arrangement, when you answer question 1.1, you need to put your sponsor on that first bit of the page and their contact details on how I can sort of set up and contact them to do the funding agreement. 1.3, question 1.3 in the application form is actually about the traditional owner group details. Now, if you're one and the same, if you're a traditional owner group and you are a registered entity, just fill out the first page. You don't need to fill out the second bit so much. Certainly the location details, but we've put guiding questions on those pages just to help you out and let you know. I've said it before, the groups that are successful need to enter into a funding agreement with the foundation. So this is, it becomes a contract, and it's a way that we can actually provide the funds to you so that you can deliver on the projects that you want to deliver on. The person signing the applications and the acceptance forms, the funding deed forms, must be duly authorised to do so by their group or organisation. That's whatever whatever arrangement you have, you just need to follow those protocols. And just an important one, when you're doing your planning and you're setting up, the start date for the project can absolutely take into account project preparation time. So if you've put a project proposal in, your first step could be to take a couple of months to build a really detailed project plan and get help doing that. And that's completely legitimate, and we want to see strong project planning at the front of especially our complex or our higher funding level projects, so that people are clear about what they're doing, people know what, the different responsibilities, can see where the deliverables are, can see where the investment of time is needed. So build that into actually like one of your first deliverables in your project setup. When you're planning out your end times, the projects just can't go any later than the 30th of May 2024. But have a look for the specifications. Where there's smaller amounts, we are asking that the projects end within 2 years. But for the bigger projects, 30th of May is completely legitimate as an end date. That just gives us, there's another 6 months after that, but that gives me 6 months to do the monitoring, evaluation, the reporting, and those types of things. The amount applied for should be exclusive of GST. So if you need a $150,000 project, map it up to 150. The foundation will add the GST if you're registered, okay? So if you're registered, you don't need to work it out. We'll add it on top, and we'll make sure that that extra money is provided to you. And yeah, just when you're working on it, just remember that the assessment panel may have very little information about you. They might not know, some of the great projects that you're already running or you've been responsible for in the past. So put in as much information as you can about what you want to do, how you're going to do it, how you're going to manage it, and the resources that you have available, or the partnerships that you're going to leverage or access to manage the project, so that they can use all of that information to assess your project and get you through. Okay, so there's a couple of ways that you can have queries. You can ask us questions. There is going to be a frequently asked questions section up on the website. There's a site set aside for it at the moment. We're collating questions from yesterday from the Healthy Water Grant section, and also we'll take any that we've got from today and we'll put them up. And also you can email us questions at grants@barrierreef.org. Now, I'll be collating those questions too from the email address, and they will also go up on the frequently asked questions site. It's just like I said, it's just a question of it's just a matter of equity and trying to get people into a space where everyone's got as much information to put in the best applications that they possibly can. Now, I know that I've said that they're a competitive grant process, but they are, we're just really encouraging all traditional learning groups at all different levels to have a think about how they might make use of this grant opportunity and set themselves up for any of the cool projects that they want to do on their country. So this is just leads us to the question and answer stage. I haven't had any come through from Eliza, so maybe everyone's quite happy. If I stop sharing, there's nothing down there. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, they can post them up. But also, like I said, there's that email address. If you think of things later on, you can access that, and we'll get back to you. We've got fairly good turnaround. Kathy and I are both working on that website, that email address. So we should have sort of like 1 or 2 day turnaround at the very most, unless we're completely swamped. And we're hoping that we're not. We're hoping that we've provided enough information in the guidelines and the application forms. But you can feel free. I can see some questions coming in. Oh, people are happy, thanks. What percentage of the grant can be allocated for project admin? Good question, Graham. It's 10%. 10% of your overall can be for the admin section. We've also got another admin type question. There is the auditing cap is I think at $3,000. So we can pay for people to get their finances, their quittals done and auditing done, up to $3,000 in that space. One from Ian, how do we find out information on how to link with the key funding areas? Is there broad material on the GBREF website? Ian, there are different sections under the RTP area. There's a really cool document though, and I'm going to see if I can find a link and I'll post it up under the frequently asked questions. But the Reef Trust Partnership summary, there's a summary doc. If you Google Reef Trust Partnership summary, it's a PDF version, and each of the component areas, the COTS, the IMR, the RS, are really well explained in that, and might give you some more kind of ideas or thinking about what that full component looks like and how traditional owners might be able to link in. If someone's particularly interested, if a traditional owner group is particularly interested in an area and they're not too sure how to link in, send me a query at that grants address, and we might be able to put up more ideas on the website and give you some more guidance on that. But we've done the thinking, but I think that RTP document will be really useful, Ian, just to look at that that higher overview level. Alrighty, that's looking pretty good. Still got 10 minutes. Yeah, if people are good, just kind of let me know in the Q&A that you're happy now, and I'll check you out. I'll hang around for a few minutes, but you're most welcome to jump out whenever you're ready to. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We're really grateful. It's nice to have an audience to talk to, and we had to record these sessions, and these will be available on the web, like I said, within 1 or 2 days. I've just got to get IT to give us a little hand converting them and putting them up. I've got quite a few emails from people just letting us know that they weren't able to make it today, but they'll be watching the webinar later on. So I appreciate people asking questions and putting things out there that other people might have asked as well. And yeah, and other than that though, we'll just send people off to the frequently asked questions section or to the grants@barrierreef.org for any further information. All right, thanks guys for talking, and thanks for just checking into that Q&A section as well. All right, stop recording. Want to stop recording? Hit the